So, if we can just talk about the changes in the industry in general, because obviously the last 15 or 20 years has seen, and specifically the last 10 years, has seen this remarkable transformation in the industry out of necessity because of the internet and the everything that comes with that, the opportunities and the dangers. And I mean, my eureka moment in that was I think it was about in 1995 or something, and I was running Parlophone Records at the time, and I think the youngest kid in the label came up to me one day, and he had this blank CD in his hand, and he said, "This has got the whole of the Beatles catalogue on it." And picked me up from the floor, and he said that he'd actually downloaded it, which I'd never heard that particular phrase before, from the web, all new to me at this point, in 20 minutes, and it cost him nothing. And so that was a sort of huge moment for me, because I just thought at that point, well, things are going to really start changing now. And I don't know how, but they radically changed. I mean, did you have a particular eureka moment when you saw something like that?
Same one, actually, only it was a matchbox around the CD, but it was still the Beatles.
It was still the Beatles,
yes.
Right. I mean, I suppose it's, and ironically, they were the last artists to be made available digitally, funnily enough, even though that's what everybody was downloading first.
But you're right, it was obviously the beginning of everything changing. And I think the advantage for independence in that was that we had less to protect than the majors did. And the majors, I think, have probably characterized the digital revolution with a degree of not wanting to cede control when control was moving away from them, and defensiveness. And we don't have any of those hang-ups because we don't need to. So we've always welcomed it. Clearly, it brings dangers and threats with it. Clearly, our property is very easily stealable these days. But at the same time, the internet gives us a way, and our artists a way, to communicate with our fans without having to convince traditional gatekeepers like radio and record stores, record chains, in a way that just makes us much more competitive and allows artists to get to the public more easily, and that is fantastic.
Yeah, so obviously one of the, if we look at one of the big dangers, first of all, is that all of a sudden, anybody with access to a computer, and eventually, if you had broadband as well, it made it easier, could get most music for nothing. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel the music industry as a whole and legislation as a whole's reaction to that has played out? I mean, do you think it's...
I think the music industry as a whole can well be accused of being Luddite to a degree. I think it's completely understandable. But I think that, for example, Napster should have been licensed by the big companies. It wasn't. I think that the big companies have been reluctant to experiment. Again, they've got an awful lot to protect, and I've got less to protect. And I think we've all suffered from that. But I think that's changing. I think certainly the licensing process needs to be simplified. I think certainly there should be more of a level playing field. I mean, obviously, I'd say that. And there's some way to go, but I think certainly it works for us. I think the big problem for the majors is that it changes habits, it changes buying habits in a way that doesn't work for them, because what the majors tend to make is pop music, and that tends to be more of a casual purchase, more disposable, whereas what we make is something that people love for more. What people love, they tend to buy in album form. What people feel casual about, they tend to buy in track form, or maybe not even buy. Maybe they just do it on the radio, or they get it free on Spotify, or whatever it is. So when we convert someone to a fan of our music, they're generally speaking going to buy an album. Sometimes they may burn or copy an album, but they're generally speaking buy an album. With the majors, if they're lucky to buy a track, and that's a huge difference.
Certainly with pop music, I would agree with you. I think the majors aren't exclusively in that area of music, and they have got their own areas of music which people are passionate about as well. So it's really music that people are passionate about, which independents have an overweight of.
true, but the problem is the music that people are passionate about generally doesn't generally sell enough to allow a major to exist. Like if you the kind of artists I'm talking about, like and even an Arcade Fire at the top end,
yeah.
if you like, even an Arcade Fire really doesn't work for a major. You really need to be selling more records than that.
Yeah,
and that's the problem for them, I think.
And so the last knockings of the last government, the Digital Economy Act was voted through. How did you, both as owner of Beggars, but also as an independent, as a, you know, an opinion former in the independent community, feel about the fact that legislation was now at least recognising that there was a responsibility for this copyright material?
We supported it. Obviously, it's not a perfect piece of legislation, but I mean, but when both England and America and the big record markets all kind of lost control of traditional manufacturing industries years ago to the Far East, and we're all built on the creative industries these days. And if you don't protect the copyright and intellectual property that allows creative industries to invest, then we all become peasants again. And obviously there should be freedom on the internet, and the internet has brought fantastic assets to all of us. God knows how we'd ever live without it these days. Wouldn't we even be able to go anywhere, travel anywhere? But it can't all be free. And you know, someone that makes something that's intangible and stealable, like a song or a book or a design or a drawing, whatever, has to have that protected. And I think it's the duty of society to allow people to make money from doing that, to live on doing that, in the same way as you can live on being a plumber or baking bread. But
how do you feel about the way that a lot of artists actually dealt with this dilemma, which is certainly the experience that I had was that a lot of artists found it very difficult to actually have a position on file sharing.
I think it's very difficult for them, and I think the Digital Economy Act is not a particularly objectionable beast. I mean, it doesn't cut people off. It throttles back. It makes it more and more difficult to consume illegally. Obviously, it's very difficult for an artist to potentially attack fans. And obviously, an artist is not only selling records; they're selling tickets. There are plenty of people that buy tickets and steal music. So it's difficult for an artist to come out against their fans, and you completely understand that. But at the same time, it's a duty of those that are in the business of working with artists to protect their interests.
Yeah. Because there was an argument from various parts of the music industry, which is, look, this is the way it's going. Music's for free, or rather, recorded music's for free. It's just down to you now to make your money from other things, such as live and merchandise and so on. How do you feel about that argument?
I think that's ridiculous. If you want to live in China, then you can do that.
Yeah.
But there's a value to recording music. It's ridiculous to pretend there isn't. You just need to make it attractive enough. And you need to kind of make the music great enough, which is ultimately what it all comes down to. And you've got to market and promote it in a way that engages people. You've got to make it look nice when people see it. You just got to make it better to buy it than to steal it.
Yeah.